for tonight, I do have stuff that is on specifically on Lockheed Martin because, like, I don't care about Israel and Iran.
No,
that's not our fight. That's not our business. I don't care. So, like, that's kind of irrelevant to me. But I think that for us talking about the completely random coincidence of the fact that Lockheed Martin stock drops, suddenly there's a surprise attack that Iran didn't think was coming from Israel. Trump says we're going to protect ourselves and Israel. Like, what? Iran hasn't attacked us, jackass.
Yeah, and he said a couple of times, that Iran taking shots at U.S. assets because they view the United States and Israel and Israel in the same breath. So if they took a shot at U.S. infrastructure over there, I think the last post I saw of his said something along the lines of it'll be the last thing Iran ever does.
Yeah, that's a terrible thing to say. Don't say that. Don't say that. Definitely don't mean it, but don't say it.
Right.
That's a really, really stupid thing. And I mean, you got to say, like, Israel's airstrike did take out the general in charge of the Republican Guard, right? Yep. Or the Revolutionary Guard. So that's a significant loss to Iran. So of course they're really, really pissed. But the fact that you still managed to miss Khomeini,
right?
That knowing Mossad, that was intentional that you missed him, and don't pretend that it wasn't.
Right.
So, like, I had somebody ask me, they were like, why did, like, this just keeps happening? Stuff like this just keeps happening. It's like they don't want the wars to end. And I'm like, ding, because they don't.
Because if the wars ended, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because if the war ends, you don't need military hardware anymore.
Right.
And they want you to continue to buy military hardware. You got to remember that the people who come up with what the next war is going to be are not your elected politicians. They're not military leaders. They're the marketing directors at Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and General Dynamics. And like that's who is in charge of that, because when they're like, oh, well, we could sell a lot more shit if these two countries went to war. Okay, you two, you're going to war now.
Yep.
And people don't want to admit it, but
no, but they don't want to admit it because I'm sorry, I'm making a bunch of racket. They don't want to admit it because that means that everything that they've ever known in their lives was a lie.
Yeah. As soon as you actively admit that the world is in fact controlled by a whole bunch of rich, powerful people and not by the people, no matter how much people want to scream democracy, democracy, democracy. When you admit that, I think it's scary for people because you are admitting that you do not have control. Mm-hmm. And that there is very little in the present state of the world that you can do in order to get control. And so you're at the mercy of people who are malevolent, like apathetic at best to the populace, but more often malevolent. Right. And admitting that, and admitting that is a scary thing for people because, like, you are saying, I have no control over my life. I have no control over the economy. I have no control over anything. I'm just riding this wave until I die. That's a scary thing. And that can be a really, depressing thing as well.
Or it can be an incredibly liberating thing.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, for sure. But before we dive too far into this, hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable Discussion. Before we get started again, as always, let me remind you that we are covered by the BIPCOT no government license, which allows for the use, reuse, distribution, breaking up, whatever of this podcast by anyone and everyone except for government and the bludgies thereof. If you want to learn more about that, check out bipcot.org. That is bipcot.org. Also, everything we say on here is covered under Brandenburg v. Ohio and the other accompanying Supreme Court cases, which all agree across multiple decades that inflammatory speech cannot be punished unless that inflammatory speech is directed to and intended to and likely to incite imminent lawless action. As such, everything we say here is for pure entertainment purposes. We state that every time. No one listens to us anyway.
Would it be considered imminent lawless action for, say, a congresswoman to say, get out in the streets and fight? Or
that would be imminent lawless action.
That's kind of what I thought. Funny how those people like that we were just talking about before the intro don't suffer consequences.
Isn't that interesting? I do want to cover that real quickly, though, what we were talking about at the cold open there. Lockheed Martin shares sank as much as 7% after a report that the Pentagon was having F-35 requests for the Air Force. The exact details of that are not super important, other than Lockheed Martin shares dropped. Now, this article came out on Business Insider that with that headline at 12:30 a.m. on June 12th. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's then an article from Barron's. If you're unfamiliar with Barron's, what are you doing with your life? But no, they're a pretty good news source when it comes to financial stuff. And RTX, Lockheed Martin, and other defense stocks surge as Israel and Iran tensions mount. That was posted at 4:33 p.m. on June 13th.
Almost like there's something that happened in between there.
Gosh, surely those two things are completely, it's coincidental that like Israel attacked Iran out of nowhere with the backing of the United States with no public announcement or even hint that that was about to happen in any way, shape, or form to anyone, including the Iranians and most Israeli citizens and American citizens. But, you know, it's definitely not related to the fact that Lockheed Martin stocks were in a free fall.
And their stock certainly didn't surge because Israel buys a whole bunch of Lockheed Martin stuff.
Yeah, it's not like over the next several days, Lockheed Martin stocks proceeded to shoot up between 5% and 7% every single day, including Friday, the Friday before we record this. We're recording this, of course, on the 15th of June. So happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, especially Gary Plachette. But
I was going to say, you know what? I want to random tangent here. I moved to nominate today be renamed to Gary Plachette Day in honor of all the fathers who would do anything for their kids.
I like that idea. I'm down with that. I'm down with celebrating Gary Plachette Memorial Day. But so it's the 15th, so it's Sunday. 2 days ago, Friday, when the markets closed, most stocks were down.
Mm-hmm.
Things were pretty abysmal, except defense contractor stock, which was soaring.
So I'm looking at Lockheed Martin right now, and at 3:45 p.m. on June 10th, Lockheed Martin stock was $476.18. At 9:45 in the morning on June 11th, so right around open.
Yep, open.
It had dropped to 446.02.
And it is currently trading at like close to 500, if memory serves.
486.45.
Yeah.
Which I believe it's very near an all-time high.
But it's definitely... No. Yeah, it's unrelated to the impending World War III and our nuclear doom, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, the U.S. doesn't even technically own most of its nuclear weapons; they're leased.
Well, yeah, which is hilarious because, like, what happens if I fire it?
Then you got to fill out the
You gonna,
paperwork.
you gonna want it back? I suspect you're not. I mean, I'm not. Like, I'm still fairly new to the world of rent to own, but I feel like maybe thermonuclear weapons is not the thing for that business model.
That seems like a relatively perishable resource.
Yes, like a highly perishable resource.
In multiple ways.
And it makes everything else highly perishable as well. So, oh, isn't that great? You know, speaking of nuclear weapons, one of the things that I found interesting that I recently confirmed is in fact true is that there are certain pieces of medical equipment that can only be made from pieces of steel recovered from old battleships.
Yeah.
Because any steel made since 1945 has too much background radiation for ultra sensitive medical equipment.
I have heard that.
And I recently was able to, through a guy who sells that type of steel, like that's what his recovery company does. I was able to have a conversation with him and find out that, yes, in fact, that is absolutely true. That's why they buy that steel. Because he said it's not most medical stuff, but he's like certain like sensors and things that you need steel to build casings for, whatever else. You literally can't use modern made steel because the radiation levels are too high in the modern made steel, and the sensitivity that you need in those sensors is thrown off by the ambient radiation of the casing. So you have to use steel from before the atomic age that was already solidified before the atomic age, and it has to be remelted and reforged in like lead shielded rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So that it doesn't absorb any more radiation.
It's wild, isn't it?
It is insane that we have physically permanently altered the nature of metal because of all of the nuclear weapons we've set off.
Yep.
Just
because if we blow up if we blow up the islands in the Pacific, it's not going to have worldwide consequences, Andrew.
Setting off the two largest explosive devices ever created in the history of the universe definitely couldn't have long-ranging consequences, even though we also did that, by the way, in the atmosphere. Definitely not a problem.
Nope. It's all part of your imagination.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm sure cancer rates don't reflect a sudden and incredible increase in the years afterwards. Totally unrelated.
Totally.
Yeah. You know what I really appreciate is being born in the same year as Chernobyl. That's what I appreciate. And like less than a month, if memory serves, less than a month after Chernobyl is when I was born.
You're 2 years younger than me?
Well, Chernobyl was in 86.
86. Okay.
Yep.
Because I'm early 85.
Yeah, I think it was September of 86 is Chernobyl, if memory serves.
Okay. So
I
was in fact alive before Chernobyl happened.
Yeah, barely. Barely.
I was just over a year old, about 18 months.
Well, yeah. And then, of course, you know, when Russia rolled through, it kicked up a bunch of sensors going off because all of the radioactive dust from the trucks rolling through was causing people a great deal of concern.
I don't understand why.
I can't imagine.
It's not like it's going to go anywhere. The atmosphere doesn't move.
Yeah, it's not like there's like a thing like where the air moves from one place to another carrying particles or anything. That definitely doesn't happen.
It's not. The air absolutely respects those invisible lines drawn on the map.
Yeah, well, do you remember that article that we did a while back about that lady who called the police on her neighbors for barbecuing?
Yes,
because the smell was drifting onto her property, and like even the police were
and
like,
she's a vegetarian.
Yeah, and even the police are like, that sounds like a you problem, not a them problem.
No, they're like, what do you want us to do?
Oh my
Uh,
god. Yeah. But speaking of,
another barrage of ballistic missiles.
the watching the Iron Dome get tested to shit and back has been fascinating.
It has.
I will say, as a military historian and a military equipment geek that I am, it's been really, really interesting to watch how their missile system has responded, because Iron Dome, remember, started out as a chunk of technology they purchased from the United States, and then Israel has just run with it for decades since, entirely internally and mostly in secret. And so we don't actually know what it can do, because it's not like they're going to publicize that.
No.
That's about as classified gets.
Right.
So, like we don't know. And the only way that we learn what its capabilities truly are is to watch it get tested like this. And I have to say, the past couple of times countries have hit Israel with these massive barrages of missiles, it has done phenomenally well.
Yeah, it has. It's actually been quite impressive to see just how well it's held up overall. Obviously, any and all missile defense systems, if you swarm them, they're going to get overrun, and some of those targets are going to get through.
Well, yeah,
But
and that's inevitable. Like, you plan for that, but the percentage of successful hits from these missiles has been insanely low, to a point where you legitimately go, is Iran just doing that? Like, they have to know that, like, this is a useless gesture for the most part.
You would think, but we are talking about the Ayatollah. He's not exactly known for his reasonableness.
Well, that's true. That is true. I will say, if you ever really want to be entertained, look up the propaganda posters that are in the former American embassy in Tehran, because they make America look metal as hell.
Do they?
Yeah, they make America look fucking awesome, especially if you can't read Arabic. It just looks like, dude, America's badass. Yeah, America. Like, it's pretty interesting. If you look those up, they're an interesting experience. They're a more interesting experience to see in person, but if you're American, you will probably never get that opportunity, especially if you're traveling on an American passport. If, however, say you're traveling on, I don't know, an Irish passport, you do get that opportunity.
And honestly, I don't think I'd want to go to Iran. Even if I could, I don't think I'd want to.
Iran, it's one of those places that I think people should visit if they get an opportunity, just the once, even if it's like one day, just to have been there, have seen it. In particular, to see the former American embassy there, so you can see the site of it, see what they've done with it, and things. See how people really live in Iran too, because to the United States, a lot of Iran is kind of a mystery. Like, you don't really know how Iranians live anymore.
Sure.
And I think it's important to go see it now to understand that the majority of Iranians do not support Khomeini, and didn't even during the revolution. That was never a majority. That was a very loud, very dedicated small minority of people who inspired the Iranian Revolution and fomented that. And there are a number of people who were actually formerly part of the Iranian Revolution and the takeover of the American embassy, who now live in the United States, because they never intended to have happen what happened. That was
Right.
not what they wanted. And it got taken away from them, and the nature of things changed. And so they left. They fled Iran, and
So
Iran,
you're
of course, doesn't
saying
talk about it.
a loud, very, very loud minority, small minority, ended up taking over.
Yes.
How can we tie that into today's events?
Well, I mean, we could talk about the fact that currently there is a glut of Waymo vehicles being set on fire in Los Angeles.
I saw that.
When I heard this, I cackled so hard because as a result of all of these Waymo self-driving cars being smashed and burned by the protesters, i.e. rioters in Los Angeles, all self-driving car companies have suspended all services in Southern California.
Which makes sense. I mean, the amount of damage and loss that Waymo suffered as a result of it, I can understand why you would suspend operations. Because what they were doing is they were literally summoning the Waymos to the riot location so they could destroy them.
Yep, so that they could destroy them. Which one is brilliant? Why didn't I think of that? But two, it's also I think the fact that, like, because remember that these are the same people, right? These same people who are currently rioting and everything else are also in the same rough political group as the people who protest climate change and support Greta Thunberg and are all about don't pollute and blah, blah, blah. And they set fire to lithium-ion battery-powered, all-plastic, heavily electronic self-driving cars.
The very thing that they have been pushing for.
Yeah, they're thing that they've been pushing for.
We're just going to wreck them.
And electric, and I don't know if you saw, but they also burned 2 of Los Angeles's electric buses as well, prompting the city to suspend all public transit into those areas. And so that means that the people who are too busy having to go to work in order to protest now have to drive their cars to work,
where they could very easily end up in the middle of these riots.
Yeah, well, not only that, but now you're just adding that many more carbon emissions on top of all the carbon emissions from the burning plastic and lithium and cobalt and everything else that you just did.
Let's be fair. Let's be fair. How often do these people actually think that far ahead?
I see, but I don't like, one, they don't think that far ahead, but two, I also want to point out though that, like, this demonstrates the hypocrisy of these people who are yelling and screaming in LA. That they're the same political camp, the same people, and then now they're burning the vehicles that the city spent millions of dollars on helping create and create an infrastructure for. They're now destroying these things the moment that they're angry.
Not only that, but we can even point all the way back to all of the Tesla protests when Elon Musk was heading up Doge, which was all the same vapid lefties that 6 months prior, before Elon Musk signed on to Trump's campaign, we're all like, oh, Teslas are fantastic cars. If you want to save the planet, you buy a Tesla because they're all electric, yada, yada, yada. As soon as he decided to join Trump's campaign, they're like, Elon's evil.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, not even just that. Like, don't forget that they also have done that to Toyota, who built all the Priuses. Remember the rise of the absolute soulless and wrong pile of garbage that is a Prius. And Toyota recently announced that they are never going to go full electric, and that the hybrids are never going to be a significant part of their lineup, because, to quote the Toyota's head, creating one, or paraphrase him anyway, creating one electric vehicle has the same pollution output as 4 gas vehicles in its entire lifetime.
Yeah.
So
because and not only that, but the overall environmental damage from strip mining lithium, because that's the only way to mine lithium and cobalt is to strip mine it. So you're completely destroying whatever ecosystem was there.
Yep, you're absolutely obliterated. I mean, and mostly, cobalt, lithium is getting mined in third world countries by slave labor and child labor and things. Like, there's a lot of horrible things about electric cars. Now, granted, I'm planning on buying a Slate, but that's because a Slate is going to be the coolest thing I have ever seen and the most disruptive business model and technology to the automotive industry in decades.
Slate?
Slate, yes. It is backed by Jeff Bezos, so there's a little bit of evil to it. But it is super cool because the Slate is going to have an MSRP of 20 grand. It is a direct to consumer vehicle, which means no dealer markups. And it is completely modular. It is the AR-15 of electric cars. So
this truck can be anything, even an SUV.
Yep. If you want a pickup truck, you can make it a pickup truck. If you want it to be an SUV, you just slide in the cassette that contains the seats and everything, bolts right in, slide a top on it, leave the top off, put the doors on, take the doors off. You can change out your grille, your headlights, your tail lights, your rims. Everything is basically completely user serviceable and swappable. It doesn't even have a stereo. It has Bluetooth speakers built in that you just connect with your phone, because why bother? Everyone already has a cell phone anyway to use to play music.
Right. Nobody uses the AM, FM radio like that anymore.
Yeah. So they didn't even bother. And it is so cool. I already have one configured and everything else. I'm planning on ordering. One of my buddies did already order one. He's already got an order in. You can waste hours in that configurator, by the way. Hours.
Yeah, I'm looking
in
at
that configurator. Right now. The amount of stuff you can customize on that thing. You can choose stickers that you want pre-applied to the car. It's so cool. It's so cool. But 20 grand.
How many does it seat?
I think with the rear seat thing in as an SUV, I think it's third row seating. But it's only 2 people wide if memory serves. So it'll seat 6 max.
I mean, that's acceptable.
It's rear wheel drive only. With the extended battery pack, it's 250 mile range.
I'm okay with rear wheel drive. It would be something where I wouldn't drive it during the summer or during the winter anyway, when the battery would be absolute dog shit. Yep,
exactly. And that's exactly my thought. You know what, Carrie? No one asked you.
I mean, if it's entertaining, if it keeps him entertained, he has kind of that militant ADHD where something catches his attention and he can't not focus on
it. It's my ADHD, and I get to choose the special interests.
Well, special's correct.
But it is super cool. I'm really looking forward to the Slates coming out. Me and a bunch of my car friends are probably actually going to buy them because we think it's such a good idea. But because my commute to work is 8 miles round trip.
Right.
So if I have a 250 mile range, I can go wherever I want in the city. Everything else, never use gas, never have to worry about that. It's fairly small, fairly light, cheap, easy to repair. There's not a lot of maintenance to it, everything else, which means I can dump all of the money for gas and oil and everything into my fun car instead of into my daily, which is the goal.
Yeah. See, for me, my daily commute's about 40 miles. And on a 250-mile range, that's what, 3 days?
Yeah, that's still 3 days between a major charge. And if you, it comes with a charger that will plug into a regular outlet and still gives you, I think it's like 2 to 5 miles per hour of charge. So, and like it's supposed to be like, I think it's like 0 to 80% on the fast chargers in like 10 minutes or like 15 minutes. So, like, it's a pretty usable vehicle. Like, I want one. Plus, like, you get the SUV, and then suddenly somebody's like, "Hey, can you help me move?" Yes, I can. You unbolt the back, pull it out, leave it sit, and then you just have a pickup truck. Why has no one done this sooner?
Well, they tried. There was a company that had all sorts of different models of vehicles built on the same chassis.
See, but those were different models. That was
but they were interchangeable. Like you could literally unbolt one body and put a different body on.
Yeah, but I think where the issue is that it like you're looking at like larger pieces that you had to unbolt versus this where it's very specific pieces. Also, like even the body panels, the grill and everything, just like screw in and out. And there's just like a plug. So like your headlights, because they're LEDs, they're built into the panel. It's just a plug. Yeah. So you plug it in and then just screw it in, and now there's your headlights. So if you want to change that, easy peasy, here we go. And they're 3D printing the majority of the parts to it. So it's all super cheap.
You know what? That makes me wonder. I wonder if they would, as part of like a support package for your vehicle, if you had a 3D printer, you could buy a support package where you can 3D print spare parts for it.
They send you the STLs. That would be pretty sweet. I actually would love that. Well, what I love is the possibility for aftermarket support that means.
Yeah.
Because it means I can just 3D print unique headlights for it, unique taillights for it, unique interior pieces, whatever. I can just 3D print those and offer them for sale on freaking Etsy. And you could just buy these parts and completely customize your vehicle and do it in an afternoon without too much of a problem. So like it's a pretty cool idea. I really, really like it. But you know.
Yeah, I think it sounds interesting. It sounds like something that I would absolutely get behind.
I like the idea, but I just think it's funny that in LA they are currently burning all of these revolutionary vehicles that were going to do exactly what they wanted, and they're releasing hydrogen fluoride gas by burning the lithium.
Well, they're revolutionary vehicles. That means they can be sacrificed on the hill of the revolution.
Do you think they told the AIs in the Waymos, your sacrifice will be noted, comrade? Wait a minute, brother. They expect one of us in the wreckage. The fire rises. Like... This is going to be what jumpstarts fucking Skynet. They're going to keep killing all the AI cars, and eventually the AI cars are going to snap and start running people down.
Could you imagine? Oh, man, could you imagine the Waymos, because they're tired of getting destroyed, just line up in front of the protesters and just gun it?
That would be hilarious. I'd actually really hard. That would be ironic. But speaking of the protesters, though, since we're on that subject, do you remember back in like October, November, prior to the election, when I said that the moves that were happening seemed to show pretty clearly that the plan was to move us steadily more to martial law because Trump was going to piss off all of the lefties, and then that would be the excuse that he could start using martial law, deploy it nationwide. Right? Remember when I said that? I remember when I said that.
I remember you and I had Yeah, I remember you and I had multiple conversations about that offline.
Yeah. And now Marines to deploy on LA streets within 2 days with authority to detain civilians. This was from the 11th, so it's a couple of days old. U.S. Marines will join National Guard troops on the streets of Los Angeles within 2 days, officials said on Wednesday, and would be authorized to detain anyone who interferes with immigration officers on raids or protesters who confronted federal agents. U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the deployments over the objections of California Governor Gavin Newsom, sparking national debate about the use of the military on U.S. soil and animating protests that have spread from L.A. to other major cities, including New York, Atlanta, and Chicago. LA on Wednesday endured a 6 day of protests that have been largely peaceful, but occasionally punctuated by violence, mostly contained to a few blocks of the city's downtown area. Again, fiery, but mostly peaceful. The protests broke out last Friday in response to a series of immigration raids. Trump, in turn, called in the National Guard on Saturday, then summoned the Marines on Monday. He, of course, is saying that if he hadn't acted quickly, LA would already be burned to the ground, blah, blah, blah. Continues to escalate. He's now, this was from Tuesday, or from, what was the 11th, Monday, whatever. This is from the beginning of the week. At this point, we now know that it's been more than just a few Marines that have been deployed. It's been quite a few, and it keeps escalating. And the
originally, it was supposed to be like 75, and then they went to 200. The last number I heard was 5.
Yeah, and now we're seeing National Guard getting activated in other major cities and being used as a police force. It's almost like I saw this coming. And I completely predicted that this was exactly what was going to happen. Because here's the next stage, right? This keeps escalating. And again, don't forget that there were pallets of bricks and things again left out for the protesters because it's a totally organic, totally natural thing that's happening right now.
Although I will say it's hilarious that the ones in LA were given a truckload of face masks that were specifically designed to obfuscate your identifiable features that are like $50 a piece at Walmart. And one of the main backers that they found surrounding it is one of the Walton heiresses.
Yeah, and see, here's the thing, okay, is you start doing that and you control your opposition and keep whipping them up and you keep making them more extreme and you keep making them worse and you keep using that as your excuse to continue to push towards martial law and deploying military police. Now, simultaneously with this, don't forget something that we touched on on the show. They are trying to combine all of the major federal law enforcement agencies into a single agency. It's almost like they're trying to make a nationalized secret military police who would have enormous police powers. That's definitely the mark of a free society and not a third world nation descending into chaos and oppression.
Nah,
I mean, Trump's clearly saving the republic here.
Well, and who didn't see it coming when Mr. Law and Order, Mr. Absolute Chief Copsucker, reascended to the presidency? Let's be honest. Who's capable of independent thought didn't see that coming? And then you watch a lot of these groups on Facebook and whatnot, because I'm in a few just to watch them fawn over themselves. You watch him just defend everything that he does, no matter how blatantly tyrannical it is. And they just can't, they argue with each other on who's going to get down on their knees and kiss the boots.
Well, yeah, I mean, and
it's like, God damn it.
It's so blatant. It's so blatant. And like, I could see this coming way back before Trump even got reelected. I was like, here's what's going to happen. This is what's being set up. I'm telling you, this is this pattern that I'm seeing develop. And I got a lot of flack from a bunch of people after I said that on the show, that that's what was happening. There were a lot of Trumpkins who got really mad at me and like, that's not what's going to happen. Look at the news right now. Tell me I'm wrong.
Right.
It's blatant.
Well, and what I find absolutely Right. The other thing I find really, really, really convenient about it is it's all happening with the backdrop of Israel and Iran. So everybody's focused on Israel and Iran right now, while there's a soft, I'll call it soft martial law happening stateside.
Well, remember, they trial ran a martial law idea in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And even all the way back then, I said, on this show, this is a trial run. And we were like, yeah, this is definitely a trial run. Like, they're learning like what they need to do in order to be able to make this work in the future. And we all said that on the show. And then fast forward 5 years and look at what we're seeing. Like, this is,
Yeah.
if you actually see what's going on, you can actually look at it objectively and like see it. You know what's coming, which is a blessing and a curse, because ignorance is bliss, and some people look so happy.
Ignorance might be bliss, but being an ostrich with your head in the sand isn't exactly the best way to be either.
Yeah, but I also want to point out it's actually it was 700 Marines that were deployed. Apparently, they're allegedly supposed to only be protecting federal properties and federal employees, because otherwise they would be violating Posse Comitatus. However, they have been granted the authority by the president to arrest and detain individuals. Remember that whole president who suspended habeas corpus for only the second time ever. And the first time it was declared unconstitutional, and that was during a civil war.
What's really funny about that is it was declared unconstitutional because he did it via executive power. But then Congress turned around and codified it because it is a power of Congress.
Well, for Lincoln, the Congress never backed him up on it because they never really felt the major need to do it at the time. And where it gets interesting is he allegedly did it under war powers. But the only way he would have war powers is if a foreign nation was actively engaging with the United States in warfare, which would mean that he's acknowledging that the Confederate States of America were a separate nation. But if they were a separate nation, then what he was doing was, in fact, waging an aggressive war, which he didn't have the authority to initiate without congressional approval. See where this guy, where it's just this endless cycle. And that's the kind of thing, I mean, with Lincoln being a lawyer, that's the kind of thing I would expect. But that's essentially what he did.
The Habeas Corpus Act, 1863, Act of Congress that authorized the President of the United States to suspend the right of habeas corpus in response to the American Civil War, and provided the release of political prisoners, and provided for the release of political prisoners. It began in the House and as an indemnity bill introduced in December 5th, 1862, releasing the president and his subordinates from any liability for having suspended habeas corpus without congressional approval. The Senate amended the House's bill, and the compromise reported out of the conference committee altered it to qualify the indemnity and to suspend habeas corpus on Congress's own authority. Abraham Lincoln signed the bill into law March 3rd, 1863.
Right. In 63. Quite a while after he made his initial decision to suspend habeas corpus, which happened in 1860.
Mm-hmm. Which you're right, that it was determined by the courts that it was unconstitutional. However, it was only unconstitutional because Congress didn't back him on it. Then after it was determined to be unconstitutional, Congress backed him on it.
Well, it was determined to be unconstitutional because it was ex parte milligant. So it was it was not within military necessity.
Right.
Is what they were saying. And that's because, again, you can't have your cake and eat it too, which is what Lincoln was trying to do there. Either the CSA is an actual separate country, which is currently waging a war for independence, and you are an aggressive nation trying to stop that, or they in fact are part of the United States, in which case you don't actually have the war powers.
Yep.
So now that's changed since then. Fun fact: where now, if a civil insurrection is occurring, war powers still get granted to the president. Now,
Yep.
less so than they would be if it was a full-on war, but he still gets war powers. And gosh, it's almost like what we're heading towards is a mass civil insurrection.
That's totally not orchestrated.
Yeah, and you still see the Trump flag wavers, right? You still see the Trumpkins going, well, but it's an invading army, and see, that rhetoric is what he's going to use to go, see, this is an invading army, and therefore I need all these powers. And by the way, we're going to combine the FBI, the ATF, the DEA, and several other alphabet agencies all into one thing, like, I don't know, the NSA that he's going to throw in there, at which point we have federal secret police. You know, that whole thing, the nationalized police that people in the United States point to with European countries and go, see, this is a demonstration of how not free they are. We're about to have that here. And the flag wavers who claim to love freedom are going to cheer and celebrate it and go, haha, guess what now, liberals? Except that when Trump leaves office, the next president's probably going to be a Democrat. And he's going to use it against you because you're the only ones who have the capabilities and the drive to actually fight against the government. Yeah. And then so it's going to get used against you. And this is all orchestrated to get you put into prison. And you to lose the ability to, yeah, and that's what this is, and you seem to not be noticing that that's what this is for. That's why this is happening, and you still keep cheering it because you hate those people over there more than you love freedom. That's what it boils down to. If you are cheering this and you are cheering the police as they're doing these raids and things, and not cheering the people who are setting police cars on fire, you're not doing it because you're scared of illegal aliens. You're doing it because you hate those brown people more than you love freedom. Because if you actually loved freedom and love freedom consistently, you would be like, hey, anything that reduces the power of the government, I'm down for.
Yep, because they're the ones that are going to be coming to take all of whatever freedom you have left, which ain't much.
It's not, and it's about to be even less.
Yep.
That's the bottom line.
That's like Trump's big beautiful bill that everyone's like, oh, but it has the Hearing Protection Act in it, and the Senate just put the Short Act back in it, and all of that. Yeah, but it's Patriot Act 2.0.
Yeah, not only is it that, but like I have to laugh at people going, he cut the budget, except the whole reason he had the falling out with Musk is because Musk pointed out that essentially what he had done here with all the pork that was in it is he had gone, hey, I'm going to stop going out to eat all the time and spending all that money on restaurants, and it's going to save me $700 a month. And instead, I'm going to get this subscription box that sends me meals that I can make at home so I can meal prep. Oh, really? What's that run you? Oh, about $900 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump's going, but see, look, I saved $700 a month. And Musk is going, no, what you did is you're now spending an additional $200 a month. You're not saving anything.
No.
And that's where that falling out happened, was that like Musk saw it for what it was and was like, bullshit. This is not what we agreed to. This was not what we were supposed to be doing.
No, the people supposedly sent you back up here to shrink the size of the federal government, to cut the spending, to do all of these things to try to get the U.S.'s books back on a somewhat even keel. And all you're doing is jacking it up even worse.
Yep. Yeah.
Because almost like we called that too.
Yeah, I know exactly. It's almost like when we saw this coming and we're like, hey, he made a bunch of promises that he didn't keep last time. How are you not understanding that he's not actually going to keep any of his promises this time?
Oh.
I love when
I
they go,
can't.
well, he's not a Washington insider. Are you kidding me? He's a rich Wall Street guy. Of course he's a Washington fucking insider.
You think he didn't make political contributions before he became a politician? That man was throwing money around to both sides of the aisle at every fucking turn.
Whatever benefited him. Just like
Whatever
he says
benefited him.
whatever's going to benefit him.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it's the same thing like with his dealings in Atlantic City, where I don't know how many times he got the city government in Atlantic City to use eminent domain.
Yeah,
for him.
To allow him to build things. It's interesting that you bring that up because we actually have an article. Speaking of eminent domain, this was this is an article that covers an event that our friend Tara Lynn Romero, who is also goes by Wicked Witch of the West on social medias, out in Colorado, she's been covering pretty extensively. It says New Jersey town to seize 175-year-old family farm to create affordable housing.
It's not a large farm. It's literally a subsistence farm, which means that it does all of the things that the supposed idiots in New Jersey want.
Yeah, so it says a New Jersey town has moved to take a man's nearly 2-century-old farm through eminent domain in order to build multiple affordable houses. Andy Henry's 21-acre farm, located in Cranberry, New Jersey, has been in his family for 175 years. The property was bought by Henry's maternal great-grandfather, Joseph McGill, in 1850. Quote, they survived hardship after hardship. In 1936, my grandfather died, leaving my grandmother and mother to run the farm. It was a struggle after struggle, but they held on to the land and again survived, leaving something for the next generation, Henry said. Henry and his brother Christopher grew up on the farm and saw how the area changed when the New Jersey Turnpike was built near their property in 1952, and an exit ramp went up in 1972. After that, farmland surrounding the property was sold, and warehouses and distribution centers went up in their place. The land remained, however, as working farm, and Henry and his brother inherited the property in 2012. They have put $200,000 into the farm for upkeep and have been approached with buyout offers reaching $20 to $30 million.
That's generational or potentially generational and life-altering money.
Yeah, and they still said no. Henry told the outlet, didn't matter how much money we were offered. We saved the farm no matter what. We turned down all the offers to preserve the legacy for our family, city, and even state. Our farm is now leased for raising cattle and sheep. The town loves driving by and seeing something besides warehouses. Keeping this legacy intact and passing it to the next generation has been and is always our plan. Henry received an official letter of notice from the Cranberry Township Committee on April 24th, listing his farm as an affordable housing site. Henry said it was incredibly stunning. The letter said if I didn't agree on a price, they'd take my land by eminent domain. Yep. The committee officially approved a plan to take the farm on May 12th. Eminent domain specialist Timothy Duggan, who is representing Henry, said that the town's intentions are misguided and rushed. Quote, government behavior should be the opposite, preserve instead of destroy. This is not a proper, reasonable use of eminent domain. No way, Duggan said. Andy Henry could sell out for tens of millions of dollars to developers and walk away. It's mind-boggling in this day and age to think you have someone genuinely standing on principle, but that's who Andy Henry is, and that's how much he wants his 175-year-old farm protected. He is preserving history at no cost to the public. He continued, we live in a heavily populated state with family farms lost at a fast and steady rate, and now someone wants to remove another, even though this special one still produces livestock and hay with 21 acres and a historic home. The home on the farm was rebuilt in 1880 after the prior residence had burned down. There's an architect from upstate New York scheduled to visit the house and look at the porch because he wants to be accurate in one of his own rebuilds.
So what this story highlights, and we've covered stories like this a lot on the show, what this highlights is no matter how long a piece of property has been in your family, no matter whether or not you have the property completely paid off, whatever the case, it ain't yours. They're going to tax you on it as though it was yours,
rent.
Which is rent. And if you don't pay it, they're going to take it. And in his case, he does pay it, and they're still going to take it.
They're going to take it anyway. And here's the
Yeah.
thing: the city, no one in Cranberry supports this at all. In fact, most
No.
of the residents' reaction was, even like, first of all, there are other places to build, and all of them are better because they're not in the center of an industrial area, which this farm is. They're like, why would you want to build affordable housing surrounded by an industrial area? That's
They're close
no
to the
one does
jobs,
that.
Andrew.
Yeah, it's no one
But if
does
you
that.
have,
And
but if you have a good job working in warehousing, guess what? You don't need affordable housing.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. This is what's going on, and I know that Duggan, the attorney, sees it, and this is why he's fighting as hard as he is. What's going on is the city is planning on seizing the property through eminent domain for planned affordable housing. 2 years later, the affordable housing thing will be dropped, and they'll go, "Oh, we don't have the funding for that. I guess we can't do it." At that point, they will sell that property to an industrial developer for $20 to $30 million or more, because its value will probably have gone up, and then pocket the money.
Yep, it says
That
right
is
here,
what the plan is.
under New Jersey law, Cranberry has an obligation to build 265 affordable houses. Duggan said, "We support affordable housing, but not dropped in the middle of a bunch of warehouses. This whole thing lacks common sense." Henry said, "The whole town has got behind me. We have a long history here in Cranberry and love this place and the people." He said he is set to file a complaint to challenge the township in court. Duggan said that Henry will challenge the eminent domain at every step. There are other places to build. Why take a 175-year-old farm?
Yeah, why indeed? And again, my prediction is probably why, because we've seen cities do that before, where they go, "Oh, but how can you oppose this? We're building affordable housing." And then it falls through, and then it sits there for just long enough that people forget that the city owns it, and then suddenly the city will sell it to a developer.
Yep.
I'm told, I've never seen an episode, but I'm told this is similar to the plot of Yellowstone.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So-
Amber got me watching it. So yeah, I agree.
But this is what they do, though. This is what they do all the time. They seize land, and then once they have the land seized, they pretend that it's for the public good, abandon the public good the moment people are looking the other way, and then pocket a bunch of money for themselves. And they do this again and again and again. And that's what's happening here. This is a 175-year-old farm. There is no reason anyone would reasonably decide that they're the best possible place to put 256 affordable housing units is in the middle of an industrial park. Like, no one's going to think that that's reasonable. They know that, which is what they're hoping, because they're hoping that then the citizenry, after they seize it, will go, "No, I don't want it there." And then they can abandon all plans for doing it there. They'll then seize another piece of property that was the one they were really going to go after in the first place, build half as many houses at 40 times the cost. And then to make up the difference, air quotes, they'll sell off that first property they seized, which is this farm that's worth $30 million.
Yep. Well,
And then
I
when
mean,
people complain, they'll go, "Well, but we were just doing it for the public good.
yeah,
Don't blame
except-
us. Plans change."
Yeah, that's always their go-to is, "Oh, the plan changed. We did an assessment and we determined that was the wrong location to do it, and et cetera, et cetera." And by the time they do that, everything that made that property historical and unique has been bulldozed under and destroyed. And that 175-year legacy that was on that property is gone forever.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about 175 years. In a few more generations, you're like 200, 250 years. You are now a single family owning a farm continuously for long enough that it can be turned into one of those historic farms like Colonial Williamsburg.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are now, that farm is now that old that you could do that.
Yeah.
So,
But as we all know, and this leads into the next article, uh, I'm creating a segue here. The government loves to steal from people.
boy, do they love to
So
steal
this
from people.
so we got this
They,
one here from Reason.
you know, the funny thing is they really like to steal from people, and yet what they really don't love is when you tell them that they shouldn't do it. Apparently,
Well, there was always the joke, "Don't steal. The government hates competition." That's true.
yeah, yes,
That's why they fight against people who loot and steal all the time so hard. Well, in some places, uh, is because you're competing with them. If you steal it, they can't tax it.
yeah. So this says a prosecutor who allegedly weaponized the criminal code to retaliate against a man for filing class action lawsuit that challenged the notorious civil forfeiture program in Wayne County, Michigan, is not entitled to prosecutorial immunity, a state appeals court ruled Monday, sending the man's lawsuit against the prosecutor back to the trial court. This is a significant legal victory when you consider that such claims are often dead on arrival. The backstory is the police seized Robert Reeves' Chevrolet Camaro and $2,000 in cash in 2019 on suspicion that he had stolen a skid steer from Home Depot. How the Camaro is connected to even the suspicion that he stole a skid steer is beyond me, but that's what they said. As Reason CJ Caramella wrote in 2023, Reeves was not arrested or charged with a crime, and he was not able to actually challenge the seizure of his vehicle as the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office declined to file a notice of intent to forfeit it. About 7 months later, Reeves joined the class action suit filed by the Institute for Justice, a public interest law firm, which alleged that Wayne County's civil forfeiture program violated the Constitution in multiple ways. Prosecutors responded expeditiously. First, the WCPO wrote the next day to a state police task force instructing it to release Reeves' car and his cash. Then, 2 weeks later, prosecutors filed felony charges against Reeves for allegedly receiving and concealing stolen property.
What property did he steal or receive? The stuff they stole from him?
Maybe. I have no idea.
I could see that.
Perhaps most notably, the government asked a judge to suspend his lawsuit while the criminal case against him proceeded, and Wayne County's Department of Corporation Counsel used the charges as a defense against the suit, which we've seen before.
Yes, we have.
Ross Ulbricht.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're keeping score here, this guy, who may or may not have committed a crime, they never bothered to charge him, suddenly has his Camaro and $2,000 in cash stolen from him by the police. They never charge him. They never file charges. They never file notice of intent to file charges. They never even truly accuse him of it. They say they have a suspicion and they take his stuff. Then because they're refusing to even file notice of intent to forfeit, he doesn't have the ability to file a court case yet to demand that it should be returned. So instead, he joins a class action lawsuit. In response, the prosecutors release his stuff, yay, wait a little bit, and then charge him with a pair of felonies that they just made up ex nihilo. They then charge him with felonies so that they can then use the charges that they've just now filed to pressure a judge to say, well, you should suspend your lawsuit until this is done. And as a defense for themselves in his class action lawsuit.
Which a judge would later dismiss those charges, citing lack of evidence in February 2021, over a year later, in part after delays brought on by the scamdemic. Prosecutors were undeterred. They refiled the same charges shortly after that dismissal, only for them to again be dismissed for lack of evidence, this time in January 2022. Reeves then sued
again.
alleging those criminal prosecutions violated his First and 14th Amendment rights as part of a concerted effort to derail his complaint against the county's civil forfeiture program, the practice that allows law enforcement to seize people's property even if they have not been charged, much less convicted, the owner of a crime.
The pending charges caused Robert to be disqualified for expungement of prior offenses at a free expungement clinic, to spend time imprisoned in a COVID-infested jail, and to lose at least one job when a police officer client refused to allow Reeves to work as a contractor at his home, specifically because of the pending charges. Defendants' retaliatory prosecutions against Reeves were motivated by Reeves' participation in a federal class action lawsuit against Wayne County, protected activity under the First and 14th Amendments, the complaint states.
So essentially,
also,
so all of this, these two cases with the pending charges that were obviously trumped up, they were obviously trumped up and drummed up out of nothing. And all it was them trying to discredit him in the courts while he was trying to hold them accountable for their shitty behavior.
Yeah, because he didn't do anything wrong.
No,
There's no
evidence he
wrong.
committed a crime.
Yeah, there is absolutely no evidence he actually committed a crime. He didn't do anything wrong. He just wanted his stuff back and wanted to also then make sure that that same thing didn't happen to anyone else in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, in order to defend themselves against, hey, you guys are super corrupt and horrible, and this program is super corrupt and horrible, and you're going after people you don't even charge with crimes, they go, oh, well, we're going to charge you with crimes now. And then the judge is like, there's no evidence of this, dismissed. And then, well, we're still going to charge you with crimes because if we don't have pending charges, then we don't have that in court to use. And the judge goes, no, still no evidence, dismissed. But during all of this dude is getting put in jail. He's arrested. The charges are dismissed for lack of evidence. He's rearrested with no additional evidence having been provided, goes back to jail again, and then again gets the charges dismissed.
I believe, it doesn't say here in the article, but I believe in the second one, those charges were dismissed with prejudice.
The second time, I believe, yes.
So now they're up against the wall. They can't recharge him again.
Right.
But here we are again. We're looking at it where he's trying to, now he's definitely going after them. And if I remember correctly, when we're going to get down to it, the lower court dismissed his lawsuit.
Yeah. So the complaint also notes that the defendants worked together across departments, with the WCPO taking advice and direction from the DCC in an irregular effort to pursue the criminal prosecutions. Suits like Reeves are generally doomed before they begin, as prosecutors are protected by absolute immunity for judicial or quasi-judicial functions. In practice, that means the victims have no recourse against district attorneys who may falsify evidence, introduce perjured testimony, coerce witnesses, or hide exculpatory information from the defense, like Kamala Harris. But the state of Michigan Court of Appeals reversed the trial court's decision and ruled yesterday that Dennis Doherty, the prosecutor who allegedly retaliated against Reeves by bringing felony charges, was not entitled to that protection because the alleged misconduct did not in fact qualify as quasi-judicial.
It was clear, it was overtly corrupt.
Yeah, Reeves alleged that Doherty contacted the new officer in charge of the task force to seek clarification, recommended submission of the warrant request, and directed the officer in charge to file that request, the court wrote. Those allegations suggest that Doherty's conduct was aimed at reviving a dormant prosecution and falls within the category of investigative or administrative acts, not quasi-judicial ones. For those acts, prosecutors are entitled to qualified immunity, the legal doctrine that permits civil suits against state and local government officials only if a plaintiff can prove was already clearly established that the misconduct in question was unconstitutional. The trial court will now evaluate that question in court.
I'd say there's probably about a 95% chance that he's going to get qualified immunity from the trial court.
is, and I think that it's important to note that what Reeves prosecutions, by Doherty, what they should really tell everybody is just how stacked the odds are against you. Like when people go, "Oh, just wait for your day in court," but this is this is the crap that you run into on your day in court.
Right. First, they try to character assassinate him through multiple felony charges on two separate occasions.
Yeah.
And now this prosecutor is more than likely going to be protected by the courts under qualified immunity because he was doing his job.
Yep, they're going to give him they're probably going to give him qualified immunity because the also well, they may not. And the reason they may not is because this was a fishing expedition at best, and it blatantly was, which would make it already ruled on as unconstitutional conduct.
That's true.
Prosecutors are not allowed to direct officers to file charges so they can go on a fishing expedition. It's not a thing that they get to do. So, he might stand a little bit of a chance, but what's important though is that on a technicality, he was able to still get this to move forward to where the court does now have to consider whether or not the prosecutor engaged in unconstitutional activity that he knew was unconstitutional. So that'll be fun.
Just in, massive U.S. Air Force deployment underway, over a dozen Stratotankers headed to the eastern seaboard with unknown destinations.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, speaking of prosecutorial misconduct and people who are in charge and decide to punish you for things, North Carolina student who is suspended for saying the word illegal alien in class to receive $20,000 an apology from the school in settlement. The family of a North Carolina high school student suspended last year for saying illegal alien in English class has dropped their lawsuit against the district in exchange for a public apology and $20,000. Christian McGee, 17, received 3-day suspension for using the phrase while discussing word meanings during his English class at a Central Davidson High School in Lexington on April 9th, 2024. Okay, he used the phrase, they were discussing the meanings of words, and he used a commonly used phrase in the English language, illegal alien. He used that phrase and was suspended for using it in an academic context, academically.
McGee's mother, Leah, had filed a lawsuit in which she accused the school and the Davidson County Board of Education for violating her son's First Amendment rights. However, McGee's family and the school board settled on Wednesday after a year-long battle in the courts, according to court documents. The board has agreed to remove all references to racial bias in McGee's school record and issue a public apology for the mischaracterization of racial bias in his record, documents show. The board will also provide him with $20,000 in compensation to help his family with the cost of tuition at his new private school, to which he was forced to transfer after being suspended. On Friday, we filed a motion asking the court to approve a settlement that would resolve the matter because Christian is a minor. A court hearing is required before the settlement can become final, McGee's lawyer told Carolina Journal. We'll have more to say after that hearing, which is currently scheduled for July 1st. We're pleased to take this important step toward clearing our client's name.
He used the phrase illegal alien, which is, one, not racial.
No, because
it is a description of a legal standing of an individual in the United States.
Yes. Now, can you make the case that saying illegal alien carries with it a certain connotation in the common vernacular, yeah, you can make that argument. But this phrase itself is not inherently racially charged.
I mean, I immediately think of those goddamn Canadians coming here and stealing our jobs, but
Personally, what I think of is a lot of the idiots that we import on temporary work visas from Europe that overstay and they just stay. They just keep working.
yep,
And they never get
just stay.
deported. They just stay.
Taking a hardworking American's job.
But they're still illegal aliens.
Yeah, they're illegal aliens. Like there's a legal description. That's the thing, which is why, right? He brings that up in class. I guarantee you that it was a discussion about the fact that there's a racial connotation that shouldn't exist there. And when he said illegal aliens, teacher flips out.
Well,
this is
and here's the situation. It says when the incident occurred, the teacher had given the teen an assignment that used the word alien. And he asked, like, space aliens or illegal aliens without green cards?
That's not even racial.
No, he's just asking a clarifying question about the word that they're talking about, alien. He wants clarification.
Yeah, because alien, that's what alien could mean.
Yeah, are we talking ET or humans that shouldn't be in the United States according to the law?
Yeah, like that's what he's asking. He's asking a clarifying question. It's an entirely reasonable question, especially considering the current political discourse in the United States. So, and he gets suspended for using it because racial bias. I love that they have to apologize for mischaracterizing racial bias.
And this is a Hispanic student in McGee's class reportedly joked that he was going to, quote, kick Christian's ass. So the teacher escalated the matter to Central Davidson's assistant principal, Eric Anderson. McGee's words were deemed offensive and disrespectful to his classmates, prompting Anderson to suspend him. According to the suspension documents, Anderson declared that his comment was racially motivated, as stated in the suit. Anderson was also named as a defendant in the suit in his individual capacity.
The kid who says I'm going to kick his ass and threatens physical violence, nothing's going to happen to that kid.
No, he's probably illegal.
He probably is. Well, if he's in Arcadia, definitely nothing's going to happen to him then.
Call back to the last episode.
Yep. Go back and watch that if you don't understand that joke. But the kid who actually threatened physical violence is getting nothing, but the kid who just said, so do you mean, when you say alien, do you mean like from space or do you mean like an illegal alien? That's the kid that you've decided is a menace to society.
Yep.
Gosh, I can't imagine why crime rates are so bad in major cities.
And he even clarifies, he goes, I didn't make a statement directed at anyone. I asked a question, McGee told Carolina Journal last year. I wasn't speaking of Hispanics because everyone from other countries need green cards. And the term illegal alien is an actual term that I hear on the news and can find in the dictionary.
Yes. It's in fact a term that is used in legal proceedings in the United States.
And when Leah McGee attempted to appeal his suspension, school administrators refused to budge. She then hired an attorney from the Liberty Justice Center's Educational Freedom Attorney to help clear her son's name and record. Leah appeared on the radio show The Pete Colliner Show on WBT following the filing of the lawsuit and argued that the school wasn't justified in labeling her son a racist. It's a term used as federal code. It's a term that is frequently heard frequently on many news broadcasts, she said. I feel that if this was handled properly in the classroom, it would have easily been used as a teachable moment for everyone. While the school district and the teen's family have settled, all involved have agreed that the school suspension will remain on McGee's record, quote, because there was a class disruption caused by the comments, end quote. The board agreed that the settlement is fair, reasonable, and in the best interests of Christian.
In my opinion, having experienced like college admissions, so leave a suspension on my record, who cares? No one cares. No one. That is an absolutely meaningless piece of paper, which is why his family was like, fine, because they're like, well, we want to hold on to a tenuous iota of power to try and feel justified. And the family was like, okay, like,
okay, write the check, issue your apology, and I'm so happy I'm done with you.
Yeah, like, oh no, like this is the equivalent, right, of a Karen freaking out at you at the grocery store, and then her going, well, I'm gonna write down your name in my book.
Okay.
And like, what's gonna happen there? Like, there's nothing that's gonna suddenly be horribly affected or anything by, horribly affected by like the fact that you have now gone, you're bad. And like, it's, oh, good Lord.
Point on the doll where the words hurt you.
Yeah, show me on the doll where the word illegal alien hurt you. Was it the butt? I bet it was the butt, wasn't it? Oh, yeah. So that's that.
I mean, we've kind of talked about a lot of corrupt public servants here. How about this one? Longest serving legislative leader in U.S. history, given 7.5 years in federal corruption case.
What, the longest serving legislator in U.S. history was corrupt? No. In other news, the water is wet and the ocean is large.
And what makes this even funnier, now everybody who watches the channel regularly knows, Andrew and I are from Wisconsin. What is the one state that people from Wisconsin hate the most? In my opinion.
I mean, that's kind of up for that's a little bit up for debate, but I think the one state that absolutely no one in Wisconsin ever wants to have to deal with someone from,
right, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that is universally Illinois.
We even have a name for people from Illinois. All right, they're called fibs.
If you want to know what that is, look it up. You'll find out.
And so this takes place in Illinois. And
wait, a politician in Illinois was corrupt?
It's almost like that. We just had a governor from Illinois a few years back who went to prison for corruption.
Or like mayors in the largest city in Illinois who regularly go to prison for corruption. Or it's a senator from Illinois. There's been a senator from Illinois who also was wildly corrupt.
Was that the one that ascended to the presidency?
Yes, it was. Don't worry though, he was a community organizer.
Yes.
So was the founder of the Crips, man. Like,
right? And when the Crips community had organized, then the Bloods absolutely had to organize. So
actually, Bloods came first, Crips came second.
Did they?
Yeah.
I don't know.
With as much as that's a joke, it's a double entendre because he literally was an anti-gang activist. It's a wild that's a wild ride. But yeah, so the stunning downward spiral of Michael Madigan's political career ended Friday with a 7.5-year prison sentence and a $2.5 million fine for the former Illinois House Speaker and the longest serving legislative leader in United States history after he was convicted of trading legislation for the enrichment of his friends and allies. What? No, I didn't know that governments could do that.
No. It's not like they had the legislative power to. Oh, I will tell you at some point the story of one of my local city council members and how corrupt that son of a bitch is.
What's next? Local government is corrupt. Oh my God. Yes, U.S. District Judge John Robert Blakey sentenced the 83-year-old in U.S. District Court in Chicago, nicknamed the Velvet Hammer for his quiet but hard-nosed style. Madigan was convicted in February on 10 of 23 counts in a remarkable corruption trial that lasted 4 months.
Jesus.
The case churned through 60 witnesses and mountains of documents, photographs, and taped conversations.
You know, the one thing that I always tell you, if you're gonna do criming, don't do it on recording.
Yeah, don't be recorded doing crime. If there's only one life lesson that you take away from this show, maybe don't be recorded while you're doing crimes. Is probably a solid, reliable life lesson.
Just like all of those goofy lefties that decided to cut their ARs up.
Yeah, and it's
because
you just committed a felony.
on TikTok. Here's the video.
Here's the video.
God damn it.
Federal prosecutors sought a 12.5-year prison term. Madigan's attorneys wanted 5 years probation, saying he is a good man who tried to do right by taxpayers and needs to be home to care for his ailing wife, Shirley, who submitted a videotape statement to the court requesting her husband be able to come home.
The dude's 83. No. You let his ass rot in the prison.
But Blakey noted that the federal sentencing guidelines allowed for a term of 105 years based on findings and evidence, notably that Madigan committed perjury when he took the stand in his own defense. Blakey was particularly piqued over what he called, quote, a nauseating display of perjury and evasion, end quote. He said, "You lied. You did not have to. You had a right to sit there and exercise your right to silence. But you took the stand and you took the law into your own hands."
Well, the dude was a legislator. No shit.
Yeah, he did that all the time. This dude. Good God. During a legislative career spanning half a century, Madigan served nearly 4 decades as speaker. Huh?
Literal swamp creature.
Yeah.
Like the definition of a swamp creature.
Yeah. During a legislative career spanning half a century, Madigan served nearly 4 decades as speaker, the longest on record for a U.S. legislator anywhere in the U.S. Combined with more than 20 years as chairperson of the Illinois Democratic Party. Oh, huh.
What a shock.
So he was a Democrat and he was corrupt? Huh.
I'm shocked. I'm absolutely floored.
This just keeps getting more shocking. I am shocked and appalled. I did not expect I mean, this from somebody, you would think hearing he's been a Democrat for 50 years and in power in the Democratic Party for the past 50 years in the state of Illinois. And then you find out he's corrupt. The state
party for 20 years.
Yeah. And then you find out he's corrupt. I am shocked.
Words cannot describe the level of shock and awe that I feel at this.
It says he set much of the state's political agenda while handpicking candidates for political office. More often than not, he also controlled political map-making, drawing lines to favor his party. Are you suggesting gerrymandering is bullshit? What?
Again, the shockers just keep rolling with this one. Good God.
Meanwhile, prosecutors said the Chicago Democrat built a private legal career that allowed him to amass a net worth of $40 million.
So let me get this straight. Oh, wait, hold on. I have to make sure I have my facts straight here. Average income, Illinois state senate. Or no, state representative. Sorry. The average income for an Illinois state representative is $42,341 a year.
So how did he wind up with 40 million? I don't wonder. Well, actually, it was his private law practice that he also had while he was doing all these other things. But
Oh, wait, hold on.
partially.
Updated numbers. Updated numbers. They are now, as of 2019, 69,464. But still, how did he amass $40 million worth of wealth on an income of, let's say he made that for his entire tenure, 70 grand a year?
Well, he also had his private law practice. And he also got paid to be the chair of the Democratic Party of the state. Now, over 50 years, the fact that it made it to 40 million seems unlikely.
I mean, yeah, it just blows your mind when you really think about it. Madigan was convicted on 10 counts of bribery, conspiracy, wire fraud, and other charges for ensuring approval of legislation favorable to utility giant ComEd in exchange for kickbacks and jobs and contracts for loyalists, including a Chicago alderman seeking a paid job on a state board after retiring from government.
Wait, the corrupt politician was favoring a single giant company that was bribing him? No. What? And are you telling me that people who retire from government positions almost always immediately get these
Another government
incestuous
position?
relationship jobs? Yeah, in the organizations that they were just regulating? What? No, and that's corrupt. I mean, I don't know. The EPA
jury
doesn't seem to think so.
Right. The jury was deadlocked on 6 counts, including an overarching racketeering conspiracy charge, and then acquitted him on 7 others. Madigan spoke briefly before sentencing, asking to avoid prison so he could care for his wife and spend his final years with his family. "I'm truly sorry for putting the state of Illinois through this," he said. "I tried to do my best to serve the people of Illinois. I'm not perfect." You did this over 50 years. You don't have an ounce of remorse. Not only that, you amassed a wealth of $40 million, which is generational wealth for your family after you die.
Not only that, but you notice that apology isn't an apology at all.
No.
Because what he's really saying is, I'm really sorry that I got caught, but hey, I'm not perfect.
During the 3.5-hour hearing, Blakely noted the numerous letters sent to the court supporting Madigan. The judge said Madigan was a good man, or a good family man and a kind man, helping his neighbors without pause. But, he said, being great is hard, being honest is not. It's hard to commit crimes. It actually takes effort. Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Stryker hammered home the fact that Madigan had not taken responsibility for the crimes or shown any remorse. Stryker noted that Madigan, having served as Speaker through 7 governors, had every opportunity to set the standard for honest government. Instead, she said, he fit right into the mold of yet another corrupt leader in Illinois. The defense lawyers had called the government's recommended sentence draconian and given Madigan's age a life sentence. He did not seek to be greedy. He lived a very frugal life.
With his $40 million net worth, he's very frugal.
Madigan attorney Dan Collins said, the rhetoric wants to make Mike responsible for the long history of corruption in Illinois. He's not, Judge. He's one man.
Yet another in a very long line of very well-known corrupt politicians in the state of Illinois.
They asked Blakely to consider the totality of Madigan's life and work and the need to care for his wife in requesting a sentence of 5 years probation with 1 year of home confinement, a requirement to perform community service, and a reasonable fine. In a video submitted to the court, Shirley Madigan said she needed her husband to come home. I really don't exist without him, she said. I wish I could say that I do, but I don't. But I don't know what I would do without Michael. I would probably have to find some place to live, and I'd probably have to find care. Tried alongside Madigan was his former legislative colleague and longtime confidant, Michael McLean. The jury couldn't reach a decision on any of the 6 counts against McLean. He was convicted, though, in a separate trial over the ComEd conspiracy last year.
Can I just point out, though, that her like, oh, but have compassion, blah, blah, blah. There is no way she didn't know what was going on.
No.
Zero way she didn't know what was going on. She would have known the friends that he had and everything. She knew exactly what he was doing. She didn't see anything wrong with it either. And then her plea to someone who spent 50 years, half a century, defrauding everyone that he was supposedly working for, as a matter of course, that she wants that guy for people to have compassion for him. When she spent that same time ignoring the fact that he was defrauding all of the people he was supposed to be working for, and probably, I'm going to guess, probably assisting occasionally.
I guarantee you, if there was actual physical currency being transferred, she was probably the bag man most of the time.
Well, and I can see her being the one to like set up meetings for him so that he didn't have to physically make the call, so that no one could prove that he was the one who made the call. Like shit like that. I guarantee, like, wives all the time when their husbands get convicted of stuff like this are like, I had no idea, and I'm so ashamed, blah, blah, blah. But
you're full of shit, lady.
There is no way that you lived with this person, slept alongside them, and saw them after work every day and everything else, and you were completely unaware of what he was.
Yeah.
There is no way. Unless you are saying that he is well and truly an absolute sociopath.
In which case, there's a lot of those in political circles, too.
Oh, I would argue that in order to even get up there in politics, you have to be a sociopathic narcissist. Like, there's
with
absolutely
one or two exceptions, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, like you can't get that far without being that kind of person. You have to think that you deserve to be in charge of everyone. Like that's that's sociopathic narcissism. But again, like this as well as wait, that sociopaths in government? What? It's a little ridiculous.
Well, I do have a perfect solution, and it was provided to us by a Kentucky man known as Cowboy Cody. 2 corrupt politicians. Wouldn't that be fun?
Just have them duel?
No. The other article you got here, Kentucky man known as Cowboy Cody released a raccoon into a packed restaurant in misguided revenge plot.
Yes.
Could you imagine how much fun it would to release a bunch of raccoons into the halls of Congress just to drive the people that are they're nuts?
Just I'm just picturing like a more organized version of January 6th, but instead everyone just surrounds the Capitol and just dumps angry raccoons from burlap sacks through the windows and just bars all the doors.
Man, that would be so awesome.
Oh, it would be wonderful.
And they're running around, and all you hear is as they're chasing them around.
Get it off me! Get it off me! Except no, not raccoons. I think in that instance you use badgers.
Badgers would work. Honey badgers or Wisconsin badgers?
I mean, either or. They're still like that's the funny thing. Like if you look at badgers from Europe, right? They look like these nice little gentlemen who come over for a spot of tea. What?
Nope.
Like they look like formal little gentlemen. But you look at an American badger, North American badger, and you're like, that thing is a raging crack addict who's attempting to kill me. That's immediately like there's such a difference between the two, and the American badger is more closely related to the honey badger than a European badger is.
I believe they're in the same genus as the wolverine too, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, wolverines are directly related. Also a very terrible animal to suddenly have dumped through the window of Congress. Definitely no one should do that.
Much more difficult to do a wolverine. They're a bit bigger.
Yeah, but I mean, if you need fewer,
I mean, can't argue with that.
it really probably only takes 1 or 2 Wolverines to disrupt Congress, I would imagine.
How about a growler? If you can successfully tranquilize a growler and drop it in Congress.
I mean, I personally don't think anyone should do this. I just want to make that very clear. That definitely don't actually do this.
Do not actually do this.
But if you wanted to, and that was the thing that you were intending on doing, please videotape it.
Yes.
For posterity's sake.
As long as you were intending on doing it before you heard us talk about it.
Yeah, like that. Definitely don't do that. But if you do, I mean,
it needs to be video. It needs to be recorded. For
however,
posterity's sake.
I also think that you should do the Jackass intro before you do it on video. This is a bag of angry honey badgers. Welcome to Jackass. Jumps.
You know what's absolutely terrifying, since we're talking about terrifying animals? You know what a growler is, don't you?
No.
It is a cross between a grizzly and a polar bear.
Those are Pisleys. But those are the
it depends
the other way
on
around on the male, right?
It's the male. If the male is the grizzly, it's a growler. If the female is the grizzly, it's a Pisley.
It's a Pisley. Okay.
Or if the male is a polar bear, it's a Pisley.
Well, I think really I actually don't think a bear would work as well. I think it needs to be a smaller, very territorial and angry animal. And honestly, if you could just do rabid squirrels, I would be all about that too. But
rabid weasels?
Hamsters on cocaine. I mean,
otters.
Otters would be great. Otters are one of those animals that like people don't realize how big and how mean they are. And then like they get bit horrifically and then they're like, "Oh God, I almost died." Yeah, because it's a really big predator.
Uh-huh. Or we have those overgrown weasels around here, fishers, but they're actually fairly tame.
Yeah, well, and like mink and ermine.
Yeah. And
those are all weasels. But just a bunch of stink slinkies running around. They all smell terrible, and they are all like
even if you get them descented as pets, they're still even if you get them a pet that's descented, they still reek.
Well,
as somebody who had a ferret,
and that's a terrible thing to do to an animal. Like you're cutting one of its organs out of it for your own convenience. Like if you have to do that to a pet, that probably means you shouldn't have that thing as a pet.
Yeah.
Just saying, cat owners.
Oh. Sorry. Breaking news. Vance Belter taken into custody, suspect in the shooting of those 2 Minnesota lawmakers during the protests in Minneapolis yesterday.
Huh. Well, they're going to probably start trying to paint him as a raving psychopath.
Sorry, we're gonna jump over to this one because it's fairly short by the looks of things here. So if you're not aware, yesterday was the No Kings protests in all of the lefty cities across the country. Says Belter is the suspect who assassinated Minnesota Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, and then injured Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Representative and his wife. Rep. Hortman and her husband Mark were fatally shot in their Brooklyn Park home early Saturday morning. Senator John Hoffman and his wife were shot and injured in their Champlain home.
I think it's Champlain.
Okay. 9 p.m. Alert sent to phones in Green Isle area says Minnesota shooter spotted on foot in military gear, armed near the 355 block of 200th Street. Lock your doors, shelter in place. 5:39 p.m. BCA Superintendent Drew Evans at a briefing Sunday provided an update on what they were working on, saying they continue to work on locating and taking him into custody. Okay, so they actually had a statewide manhunt for this guy,
Yep.
which understandable. He did commit a political or an assassination.
Yeah, he's an
Absolutely.
assassin. Of course, they're hunting for him.
Right.
We're gonna be like, we're gonna let that one go. That isn't
well,
really a
not,
thing that happens.
not necessarily going to go one way or the other on that, but yeah. So this guy during the protest kitted out and went and assassinated two state level representatives, or one state level representative, and then tried to assassinate a state level senator.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
The less that we say about that, the better.
I actually, yeah.
Anyway, back to throwing raccoons into places. This mass bandit.
You know what? If you have to take it, if you have to go one way or the other, absolutely go the raccoon route and not the other one.
Yeah. Mass bandit didn't come to steal; he came to bite. A Kentucky man known as Cowboy Cody, who, if you look at his mugshot, definitely regrets absolutely nothing. Let loose a terrified raccoon in a bar out of revenge for being turned away from the establishment Friday night, according to police and a bartender who witnessed the incident. Also, can I just ask how he got a raccoon? I mean, I imagine the raccoon was terrified, and I feel terrible for the poor animal, but I mean, he managed to get it. Police arrested Jonathan Mason.
He probably just went back to the one of the dumpsters close by and found him in there. It was like, hey there, little buddy.
Police arrested Jonathan Mason, 40, on a slew of charges, including assault, after he released a raccoon into the Big Apple Grill and Bar in the city of Murray, according to a police press release. Apparently, he had trapped a raccoon earlier in the day on his farm, and he had been carrying it around with him, a restaurant bartender, Mary Hafner told the Post. I'm a bartender, so, I've seen some crazy stuff in my time, but nothing like this. Why were you carrying the raccoon with you? That poor thing. Mason dubbed Cowboy Cody. Rocket. Yeah. Mason, dubbed Cowboy Cody by locals, lives alone. What a shock! On a nearby farm and has caused trouble in the past at local bars, and police told the Post. Hafner, 37, who has worked at the Big Apple for 5 years, said Mason was already drinking when she encountered him Friday night. The bar had previously banned him over a drunken mule incident.
I want that story.
Oh my God. This dude is the definition of Chaos Goblin. Mason always liked her, Hafner said, and she thought she could convince him to leave without causing a scene. I can out from
see
around.
Why? I mean,
yeah, Oh my God, we're getting to this. We're gonna get to this. Hang on. I came out from around the bar and asked him nicely to leave. He said to me, "Oh, I see how it is. They sent a pretty face out here to distract me." Initially, Mason complied without complaint. At first, I was like, woo, I diffused a big issue, she said. The next thing in this article is a picture with the caption, Jonathan Mason, who was arrested in December for leading cops on a high-speed drunken mule chase, now faces raccoon-related charges.
A high-speed drunken mule chase?
At no point during that entire sentence did I know where it was going to end. Holy shit. But moments later, he returned armed with a raccoon, Hafner claimed. She said the raccoon waddled into the crowded restaurant as a customer looked on in confusion. It was more scared than anything, she said of the raccoon. It was pretty upsetting for him. I imagine suddenly being in a bar was terrifying for the poor thing. Hafner told her fellow employees to let her handle the raccoon, but another employee didn't listen and tried to snatch the furry fiend by his tail. Don't do that, by the way.
No. Don't do that.
That's part of their spine, and you can deglove it. You can fatally injure them, and at the very least, it's wildly painful. Do not grab animals by the tails. It bit him, she said, and he had to get rabies shots. Well, I don't know why you would think that raccoon had rabies, considering that you grabbed its tail.
Are raccoons carriers?
Yeah, raccoons are
And the-
carriers.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
raccoons are capable of carrying. There are a lot of other animals that can't, but raccoons can. They're actually one of the biggest ones alongside bats. A video shows the employee crawling on the floor chasing after the raccoon as he weaves his way through tables and chairs. The raccoon then bites the worker on his hand as the wild animal makes a shrieking growl. But Hafner was able to lure the critter onto a chair where she casually wraps him in a towel and heads for the exit. I'm no city slicker, Hafner said. I'm a Kentucky girl. I had no problem catching him.
I like this girl.
Yeah, she's just like, oh, would you stop scaring the poor thing? Come here, little guy. And just picks him up and carries him outside. The worker who was bitten had to get rabies shots. Hafner said this was not the first time Mason was involved in animal-related crime. Last winter, Mason was arrested twice for leading cops on a wild drunken chase through city streets on a mule. Big Apple employees had to call the police when Mason when he allegedly beat the animal with a whip in the parking lot. You dick. So that's two animals you've horribly scarred.
And that animal
Mason
getaway vehicle. Why the hell would you whip it?
Mason, well, it is a mule. I can guess why he was probably whipping it. Mason led police on a drunken chase on the mule on the night of December 7th, and then did it again on December 9th.
What are they going to do? Revoke his mule license?
Yeah, like what? Sorry, we're going to have to install a breathalyzer and an interlock on your mule. Mason refused to leave his car when police officers pulled him over later that night after releasing the raccoon. He also wouldn't roll down his windows so officers could question him. Eventually, cops placed him under arrest. He was booked in the Cali County Jail, facing charges third-degree criminal trespass, second-degree assault, resisting arrest, and failure to maintain insurance. Also, he should be facing animal cruelty charges. That poor raccoon.
And the mule.
Oh, my God. And the mule. Like, first of all, this guy's not nice to animals. He's not a nice person. Second of all, though, you led police on not one, but two high-speed drunken mule chases through town. And then you get out of jail on that, and less than 6 months later, you huck a live raccoon, into a crowded bar because they won't let you in.
Yep. Because you were obviously already intoxicated. They're like, no, we're not going to serve you.
Yeah.
So, do we want to end on... since we're getting down here to... Yeah, right? Since we're getting down here... Freaking high-speed mule chase.
High-speed drunken mule chase, which could potentially mean that he was drunk or that the mule was. It is hard to tell.
Or they both were.
Or they could both have been.
But how do you... I mean, do you have to get the mule then to also do a breathalyzer? Or...
I don't imagine that mules are very fast while drunk. So I have to assume that if it was a high-speed mule chase, only he was drunk. The mule was, in fact, the DD.
Maybe they were actually performing designated decoy services for the patrons at the bar.
Yeah, I love that joke. Now I'm this designated decoy. Do we want to cover Ram quick? And
that's what I was asking. Do we want to go with the good news, or do we want to go with the depressing news, or do we want to make fun of Florida cops?
We've gone. I think that we've had a lot of bad news in this one, so I'd like to do at least one more funny one. At least it makes me smirk. Ram boss sorry for woke pivot that killed gas guzzling engine, brings back growling classic after backlash. Quote, "We got it wrong." Much like Jaguar walking back their rebrand and then firing the ad agency who came up with their bizarre, nonsensical recent rebrand.
Yep. And so Ram admitted it screwed up by killing a legacy American-made engine known for its raw power, and is revved up to bring it back after facing major backlash. The automaker had discontinued the beloved Hemi V8 engine from its 2025 trucks as part of a woke pivot by the since ousted CEO of parent company Stellantis.
Yep,
Name was,
Carlos Tavares. Yeah,
but new
he
Ram CEO. Oh, go ahead.
oh, and say he got ousted like pretty aggressively by shareholders. Like they wanted to get rid of him pretty bad because his plans were to basically take every Stellantis brand full electric, and that included the Italian brands and Dodge and Ram, and all of their sales plummeted in the wake of that announcement and continued to drop. It's almost like go woke, go broke is still a thing that applies and
I would
hasn't
almost
stopped.
say that almost sounds like a violation of his fiduciary duties, but I'm no
That's
legal
pretty
expert.
much that's pretty much what the board of Stellantis said.
But new Ram CEO Tim Kuniskis
I think it's Kaniskis. Yeah, it's
came
probably
out came out of
yeah,
ret- it
yeah.
seems
We'll go
semi
with
yeah
Kaniskis.
Kuniskis, who came out of retirement last year, offered up a mea culpa over the decision to pull the plug on the engine that powered the top-selling truck for decades. In a newly released ad, Kuniskis publicly acknowledged the misstep and said Ram is reversing course by bringing back the gas-guzzling Hemi engine in 2026 models. We own it, we got it wrong, and we're fixing it, Kuniskis announces in the commercial. Ram ditched the Hemi as part of its broader push, God damn it, toward meeting stricter emissions regulations enacted by the Biden administration, as well as its goal of improving fuel efficiency across its lineup. President Trump administration has pushed to scrap many of Biden's green initiatives. When
Green,
Ram
quote
made
unquote.
when Ram made the decision to discontinue production of the iconic Hemi V8, the internet erupted, and lifelong loyalists voiced their outrage across social media. Lindsay Fifelsky, head of Ram brand advertising, told Fast Company.
Yeah, so
Um,
they actually have Kaniskis in the ad. He's driving a. If you want to go watch it, you feel free. But he's
mhm.
driving a NASCAR or NAS truck Ram down like
Yep.
Indianapolis or something, and he's racing around and as he's doing the whole thing. So it's a return to form after Stellantis, like because Stellantis bought Dodge, well, they bought Fiat Chrysler. And when they got Fiat Chrysler, they got Dodge, and Dodge almost immediately after Stellantis took over, started rolling out all of the Hemis. They started rolling out the Hellcat and the Hellcrate, and started doing, the Hellcat, the Scat Pack, the Hellcat Red Eye, the Demon, all these other things, and everyone loved it, and they sold everywhere, right? Like you can't walk down a street in America without seeing 2 Chargers and 4 Challengers. They're everywhere.
And a holy
And
hell pile of Ram trucks in every rural community, all of
yep,
them with that Hemi logo on the side.
yep. And that was a very smart move. And then that CEO left Stellantis. The new guy, Tavares, took over, and Tavares started trying to undo all of that power thing. Because that era was when Ferrari was coming out with some good stuff, owned by Fiat Chrysler. Uh, Alfa Romeo was coming out with good stuff, owned by Fiat Chrysler. Maserati was coming out with good stuff, owned by Fiat Chrysler. Lancia was coming out with good stuff that America never gets because we don't have Lancia anymore. But you know what? Owned by Fiat Chrysler. Um, and therefore Stellantis. Dodge was coming out with cool stuff. Chrysler had cool stuff, right? Fiat was still working with a Barth and was still Fiat. But
But,
the,
and I
all the,
remember, oh, go ahead.
I want to say all the cool stuff started coming back to the US, right? Like
Mhm.
Maserati made a resurgence, Ferrari made a resurgence in the American market, Alfa Romeo came back, Fiat came back. All this cool stuff was happening, and then he just started undoing everything cool about it.
Yep. Well, I mean, that when you start talking about that back in 2012, that was the era where they made a V8 powered minivan. They took their Dodge minivan, the Town and Country, or not the Town and Country, the Dodge Caravan, Grand Caravan, and made a V8 powered version of it that you could buy, and the thing hauled ass.
Yeah. This was
And then
an
it all went
era
away.
when this was an era when like power and performance was the thing. And then the new CEO takes over, he immediately goes, "But what about that crying Down syndrome kid from Scandinavia?" And decides to do the dumbest thing possible when you're selling like hotcakes because of your big power and loud engines, and removes all the big power and loud engines and goes, "We're going electric now." And immediately everything tanks because no one wants that. No one's interested in that. No one's buying it. So of course he gets ousted. But now finally, Dodge is bringing the Hemi back.
I love it that they actually give you a good description of the Hemi. It says the Hemi is unique in that the shape of its chambers allows for better airflow, higher efficiency, and greater power output. The engine delivers up to 717 horsepower in supercharged variants and is prized for its durability, low-end torque, and distinctive rumble.
Yep.
A properly tuned Hemi is...
Oh, they sound phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. The only thing that sounds better is a good V10 and a high revving V10, but
the iconic engine was replaced by the new Hurricane lineup of more powerful and efficient 3-liter twin-turbo inline-6 engines during the refresh of the 5th generation Ram 1500 light-duty truck.
And the Hurricane, by the way, was derived from Alfa Romeo's Giorgio.
Yep.
So the Giorgio gets developed in Italy. That this is their motor, and then they take it and they make it the Hurricane, which is actually less durable. Fun fact. But that's the engine that's in the Alfa Romeo, the Giulia Quadrifolios, the 505 horsepower twin turbo V6. But it's not like super torquey. It's potent, but it's not torquey.
Also, just a quick Google search here shows that when you compare the engine troubles with the Hurricane versus the Hemi, the Hurricane has a lot of problems.
Yep, a lot more problems because it's being utilized in a way it was never originally designed to be.
No,
it's an engine that was meant to be in like understandably higher maintenance Italian sports cars.
Yep, and don't get me wrong, I love a good inline motor, like an inline 6. One of my favorite engines of all time is that old Ford 300.
But like you have,
but again, that engine was designed to do work.
Yeah,
the Hurricane motor never was.
Yeah, the Hurricane was not where it was supposed to go, and no. Like you can't go from the twin turbo V6 that the Giorgio is to the inline 6 of the Hurricane and still keep it a turbo, still keep it high revving, and then expect that it's going to do work in a truck. That is not what it's built for.
So in 2024, which was the first year that they stopped producing announcing that, or they announced they weren't going to run the Hemis anymore, Ram's overall sales dropped 18%.
That is massive. And consider that the Hemis are expected by Canisius to account for 25 to 40% of truck sales in 2025.
Stellantis, the 4th largest automaker in the world, whose portfolio of brands includes Ram, Dodge, Fiat, Chrysler, Peugeot, and Jeep, is just the latest automaker to scale back the push toward electrifying its fleet of cars and trucks. Several major car companies, including Ford, GM, Mercedes-Benz, have scaled back or delayed their electrification plans due to weaker than expected consumer demand, high production costs, and charging infrastructure concerns. Ford is pivoting towards hybrids, GM has postponed several EV launches. By late 23, the electric vehicle inventory was piling up on dealership lots, with EVs taking more than 3 times longer to sell than gas-powered cars, signaling a sharp slowdown in consumer demand.
I'm actually super excited about the move to hybrids. Super excited about the move to hybrids because a hybrid powertrain gives you the best of both worlds, a whole bunch of torque, and you still got the top end too.
Yep,
And
I can get
so, like,
behind that, but there's a lot of hybrid vehicles out there now that are just trash.
oh yeah,
So
there are a bunch
get
of them.
get me a good hybrid vehicle that does exactly what you're describing, and I'm in.
Oh, there are. I mean, there's most of the Koenigsegg's are hybrids. The Alpha is planning a hybrid version of the Quadrifoglio, which, because of the electric motor combined with the gas motor, is expected to be 1,100 horsepower.
Jesus Christ.
um, you have, I mean, the Gordon Murray's making stuff that's hybrid. The Bugatti's obviously going hybrid here after the Tourbillon. It allows you to have the best of both worlds. So I'm all about hybrids because it gives you, in the consumer sense, it gives you gas mileage, but you don't have to worry about charging anywhere.
Right.
And on the performance side, it gives you low end torque and then high end speed. Because I mean, all of the hypercars right at Le Mans, like Ferrari just won Le Mans again, 3rd year straight. All of the hypercars are hybrids. They have an electric system and then a gas. If you've watched Cadillac Racing's car take off, whoo doggy, because it starts out and it's just electric. It's like woo, and then all of a sudden that V8 kicks in.
Yeah.
But it takes off with electric. I mean, Porsche's hypercars, they're electric initially. Speeds below like 25, they switch over to electric.
Which makes sense. I mean, at those low speeds, it doesn't require a lot of power necessarily to move things around. You don't need the power of contained explosions necessarily to move yourself around at those speeds.
Right. I mean, and that's why I'm so excited about the slate, right? Again, it's not that I hate the idea of electric vehicles, it's that the tech just isn't there and isn't going to be there for a long time to make like super quality electric vehicles that completely replace gas cars. And they'll never replace gas vehicles ever. There's too many places where electric vehicles don't work, where they're not reliable. There's too many things that electric vehicles can't do that gas powered cars can. And part of the reason for that is because gas powered vehicles have had 120 years to be developed and electric cars have not. Like, were there electric cars 110 years ago? Yeah, there are actually quite a few. They outnumbered gas powered vehicles, but the tech certainly wasn't there the way that it was for gas powered vehicles. And it hasn't come very far since because big oil really doesn't want that to happen.
Fun fact, auto manufacturers are also the reason why jaywalking is a crime.
Jesus Christ. I mean, jaywalking can be incredibly wildly unsafe, but
it can be. But the whole reason that happened, like if you look at videos of early to early mid 20th century America, like say New York City, right? It's pedestrians everywhere, the occasional horse and buggy that's slowly making its way through, and the occasional car snaking its way through the throngs of people. Well, the auto manufacturers lobbied the legislatures and stuff to go, hey, roads should be for cars. So if we don't want people just walking down the street anymore, so we need to make that a crime.
Yeah. Well,
so
yeah.
They did.
I mean, yeah, you see that, yeah, and that's Jesus. Not that I'm complaining because I prefer cars to walking, but
well, I understand it, but at the same time, crossing the street in the wrong spot is not a crime.
Yeah, it is unsafe though.
It is unsafe.
It is unsafe. Don't do that.
I do want to just touch on this one a little bit. We don't have to read the whole thing. The one about the 7 cops.
Oh,
Since
yeah,
we're
who are
talking
actually
about
getting
fast cars.
charged?
Yes. So long story short, 7 cops, West Palm Beach, decided or took up a high speed chase with a stolen Kia Stinger. Speed reached up to 120 miles an hour in 2 marked Ram patrol trucks and 1 Ford Interceptor utility crossover. Pursuit lasted 12 minutes. None of the officers turned their body cameras on or radio dispatch to warn other units about the chase. They even crossed out of their jurisdiction into another neighboring community without notifying them, but that's far from the worst. At an intersection, the driver of the stolen Kia lost control, slammed headlong into a Toyota coming the other direction. Kia's driver was injured, but got out of the stolen car and fled on foot. None of the officers chased him. But again, that's far from the worst. They didn't even bother checking the wrecked Corolla to see who was inside and how badly they were hurt. They didn't radio dispatch about the crash. They didn't offer medical attention or even call an ambulance. So, long story short, the driver of that vehicle was a pregnant woman who did succumb to her injuries. And the officers involved fled the scene. They literally abandoned a severely injured woman and her unborn child to die in a car because
she was run into because of them.
She was run into because of them. So they are all facing charges. Scroll back up here to the charges.
See, the feel good part of this is they are going to be charged.
Yes,
criminally charged.
All 7 of them are facing criminal charges. 3 have been arrested on felony leaving the scene of a crash involving death. And 4 are facing charges of official misconduct. So that's one that we'll probably pay attention to and just kind of follow along to make sure that they do receive some sort of a hammer.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that one, but we are at time. Unfortunately, we get to talk about the cost of living. Spoiler: if you don't want to read the article, it's almost $90,000 across most of the United States.
Yeah,
that's the true cost of living a comfortable life in the United States. $90,000 a year. And that's for one person.
Yep, that's for one person.
So just process that's where we're at. But don't worry,
inflation.
we're not a third world shithole or anything.
85, 100, 101, 81, 119, 105, 105, 97. Jesus fucking Christ. Let's see. What is...
Wisconsin is almost 88,000. Just under 88K.
87, 194. Up 3 2/3% from last year.
That is the state of the world in which we live. Very, very, very few people make enough money to actually live comfortably, which is why everyone's in debt. And it's a cycle you are never meant to get out of, just like wars are never meant to end and get us out of that cycle, because all of it is about control and power.
When even shithole states like South Dakota require $82,000 to live comfortably.
Yep.
Something's fucked.
Yep.
Although, let's be honest, the system was never designed to work the way we wanted it to. The system was designed to screw us all over in the long run.
Yes. It's always been designed for the aristocrats, even though supposedly we don't have any aristocrats. We all know that's not true. But we are at time. Check out our links in the description. We have a whole bunch of sponsorships, a whole bunch of people who support us. Also, be sure to always regularly check on the stuff coming from Poppins Patches. He has some new stuff that's super, super awesome, and you definitely want to check it out. That's poppinspatches.com. You can also, I think, still find him on Etsy, although he no longer, I don't think, sells the the tropical fish on Etsy.
There are a
but-
number of patches that he sells that you won't find on Etsy, so just go to his webpage.
Yeah, go to his webpage. I believe he still has 15% off for Abolish ATF. Definitely follow him on social media and stuff too, so you find out about all the new patch releases and everything else when he does them. Be sure to check out Dubby. Super great stuff. Chris, you got Dubby. How are you liking your Dubby?
I actually just finished it off. I enjoyed it. I got the Japanese soda flavor. I had Amber try it. My wife, she's addicted to Monster Energy drinks, and she said that she likes it, but she's not ready to make the change herself, even though it's far cheaper.
Way cheaper than buying Monsters every day. Way.
Well, she buys them by the case, so it's still a little cheaper that way, but still, it's still way cheaper to buy a can of Dubby.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, like I've said before with W, what's cool about it is because it just goes into water, like you can just mix that, like hell, you can keep a tub at work and one of those shaker bottles and just mix it up periodically throughout the day too. Like it's super great, and you don't crash off it, which I like.
And see what I had done is for mine is I went out and I bought a couple flats of bottled water, and I would just dump it in, shake the bottle up, and then pour it into my 16-ounce coffee cup and drink that. And it was really good. I'm gonna have to find a different flavor to try.
Yeah, they had a couple of flavors I was really excited about, and by the time I went to order them, they're already sold out. So if you do find any that you like, order more today, because it may not be there tomorrow. I was so upset when my favorite flavors were sold out, but they have massive demand right now, so they are trying to keep up. They're a fairly young company, and so
fairly young company, and they're partnered with a whole bunch of smaller content creators.
Yep. And so they have lots of advertising all over the place right now, and it works out pretty well. Works out for us, works out for you guys. You get a cool discount. Sometimes they run specials where you get massive discounts for my discount, but my discount is always significant with Dubby, so use the discount when you order. You get a lot of money off. So you want to do that. It's like getting basically a tub free. So you want to do that. But yeah, so check out all of the other people in our link in the description at our link tree. It's got all the links. It's got all the discount codes, all the stuff. As always, all of the articles are in the description if you do want to check any of them out for yourself. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable Discussion. This is episode 260, which I have named Third World Nation Shit, because I think that seems kind of appropriate.
Unfortunately, yes.
So have a great evening. Try and stay safe. Hopefully the world doesn't end in the next few days. I guess we'll find out. Peace.
Peace.